Brooklyn, get ready. There's a train a-coming. But pretty soon, it won't be the L.
The shutdown of the L train is a big moment. It will be a mess. I mean, make no mistake.
The L train by itself would be the 10th largest transit system in the United States.
So what are the alternatives? This entrepreneur's got one.
We need concrete solutions available today.
And we're sure to see a lot more of this.
There's no better way to get into Manhattan than that bike path.
Courtney Williams is also on the road to two-wheeled salvation. Can she convert communities of color with very few transportation options to cycling commuters?
It's just hard to get out. I mean, people need to move with the same amount of equitable transportation.
And how about some subway history? Like for the little train that could, the G.
It is the only line in the system that does not go into Manhattan, and it has its own character.
It ain't nothing but a G train, baby.
This week, it's all about getting there and back. So grab a seat or a screen and come along for the ride. In Amsterdam, the Netherlands, a traffic jam is a phenomenon for two wheels. In fact, Amsterdam has been called the bicycle capital of the world. And not only because of their nearly 1-to-1 ratio of 1 million bikes to 1.1 million people, but because when bike lanes got so crowded and bike parking so sparse, they changed the infrastructure to accommodate more bicycles. In Bangkok, traffic jams of the four-wheel variety contribute to an urban gridlock that adds 2 hours a day to the average commute. While in Mumbai, India, the busiest train system in the world transports 8 million commuters a day, with people routinely undertaking their commute from the top of a rail car. In Tokyo, trains are how fully half of the workforce moves through the city. And the only people not fighting for space are the Oshiya, whose job it is to push people deeper into packed subway cars so the train doors can close. Yet the trains still manage to run embarrassingly on time. In fact, if it's even a few minutes late, the system will generate an apology for your boss. In other news, the G train got a countdown clock last year. On that happy note, I'm gonna invite you to relax. And whether you're watching this program from the cozy confines of your snuggie, strap hanging your way through your commute, or enjoying a lovely Surrey ride in Prospect Park, it is our hope that this will give you some insight and maybe even some inspiration as we go in on transportation.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The shutdown of the L train is a big moment for hundreds of thousands of commuters who will be affected directly, but also really for all New Yorkers who rely on public transportation.
This is something that's going to be felt around the city. It's going to be about 275,000 people that need to take a different route.
Even though the city and state are taking steps to prepare, it will be a mess. I mean, make no mistake. It's going to be gridlock, long commutes. The time to prepare for the L train shutdown is now. April 2019 seems like a long ways away, but it's very close.
swirling right over my shoulder here, what's being called a superstorm tonight. It's a massive storm, 1,000 miles across.
There will be the direct impact of the 300,000 commuters who need to get from Brooklyn to Manhattan every day, about 50,000 commuters within Manhattan who won't be able to use the L, and then just everybody else who will be affected because all those commuters looking for an alternative will crowd other subway lines. What we're going to see, I think, is really unprecedented in terms of the city and the state carving out exclusive space for buses and bikes on streets that are near the L trains.
For the last few months, a number of cyclists who take the Williamsburg Bridge on a daily basis have been gathering. So every Wednesday around 8 o'clock, we've been meeting at various coffee shops.
Williamsburg Bridge is already the busiest bike crossing of the East River. The L train by itself would be the 10th largest transit system in the United States. So there's no way you can shut that down without having some effect. We think we're doing the best we can to mitigate that, but subway lines all over the city are going to be crowded with overflow people. Some traffic is going to go to other crossings. What we really want people to do is take trains, take buses, bike, walk, do anything but drive themselves into Manhattan.
From Greenpoint all the way out to Bushwick, this is your primary access point to get into the island of Manhattan. When the L train shuts down, there's no better way to get into Manhattan than that bike path. I'm anticipating that there's going to be thousands more cyclists going over the Williamsburg Bridge.
We need concrete solutions available today. The mission of the new L is to increase accessibility to transportation for all Brooklynites affected by the shutdown. So I've been a Brooklyn resident for about 2 years now. After taking a deeper dive into the MTA mitigation plan, along with the timing of having to think about renewing a lease, I started to become very concerned. It became immediately clear that the plan that was released to the public wouldn't be suitable in terms of alternative transit. This isn't like an anecdotal issue. This is going to affect hundreds of thousands of people. That's a lot of humans. We need to diversify the options and that we can't just expect everyone to take the subway lines. Yes, it's formed as an LLC. It's not formed as a non-for-profit. There are operational expenses. It's not meant to be this like massive revenue generator. I will personally like to use the service to get to my existing day job. This was created in response to a plan that was put out by the MTA. There aren't suitable alternatives that are being provided as public offerings. I hope that there are enough public offerings where we can shut down operations.
We've added 1 million residents and 500,000 jobs over the past decade or so. Our streets are busy, our subways are busy, everything is busy. You take these 275,000 people a day, there isn't an easy place to put them that isn't already busy and full of other people. How do we cause the least amount of damage possible when this necessary work is going on?
We can't accommodate future growth with subways. We have to do it by turning our streets into peopleways and really making streets less about cars and car parking and more about moving people via buses and bicycles.
In the spirit of never wasting a crisis, a group of urban commuters are exploring transportation alternatives and breaking boundaries by proving that bike lanes are for everyone.
My name is Courtney Williams. I am the chief strategist of the Brown Bike Girl. I partner with organizations, local government, nonprofit individuals who have the will to help communities of color have more equitable access to cycling. When I got to New York City, the bike culture was very, very evident. So I would see adults on bikes looking very fashionable and bike chic, and I'm about being fashionable and chic when I have time. And I started cycling, and I kind of eventually maxed out the routes in which I was comfortable going by myself. My mother raised me to be very conscious about my femininity and my color in regards to my safety. So I was not going to go deep into the woods of Yonkers by myself. So I started looking for other individuals to be with and ride with.
I don't take no shit. That's like Pookie. You know I'm like a let me see you do. Give it up for Suki, y'all. Community Arts Council member in the place. Number 10, shut me down.
I haven't planned on it. Where's the microphone?
We're going to leave from right here, and I'm pointing it out.
I'm Grace.
Meet us over at the Welcome Tent to do the community bike ride with Courtney and the Brown Bike Girls. Big shout out Brooklyn, how you feeling? We are
When
Brooklyn.
I started riding bicycle in New York City, becoming part of the bike culture per se, in the very beginning, my goal was to do all the group rides that Transportation Alternatives and other big organized rides that organizations would make, so like the 5-borough bike tour, all these things, the kind of rites of passage, check it off the bucket list things. And as I was involved in the groups that I was in, I was finding that the people of color absolutely were not clued in on them, or even about the big rides themselves. So what I wanted to do with becoming involved and being an advocate was to make sure that everyone in the city was reaching their full potential by getting the knowledge.
In the event that we get cut off by like a traffic light, I will try not to run lights that I think that we can't all make it through. But in the event that we do, just yell off the back. That lets us know forward that somebody's missing. Cool? Alrighty. Let us go.
I look at partners as people who have a long-term focus in one area and want to work with me for a long-term initiative. So that would be like local government, like New York City, Department of Transportation, Department of Health. They have goals around improving the quality of life for residents in a concentrated space or for a particular initiative like the L train shutdown is about to happen. And I will be partnering, should things go smoothly, right, with Department of Transportation about how to prepare people about that. Hey, who just joined?
Hi, this is Sharon.
Hey, Sharon. Bike New York always comes in force. Who's that last person? It is Pio. I intentionally make sure to remind people where they are or are not being equitable and challenge them to make the most equitable things happen. So for example, the Department of Transportation, and not just them, but all of the major players and stakeholders who have been preparing for the idea that people should commute by bicycle to overcome the catastrophe that will be the L train shutting down over the Williamsburg Bridge and all the buses that are going to back up across Grand and things. But I would like to put some energy into developing some ideal routes and helping people practice going along those routes into the city or to a nearer commute station. In August, I was invited to lead a group ride for BRIC Arts in collaboration with Ingersoll Community Center. So Fort Greene area, Dumbo area, Brooklyn Heights area is actually somewhere where there's been a continuous history of free Black Africans and African descent people. And I want people to know that.
Y'all come up on the sidewalk if it makes you more comfortable.
I recently created a class called Cycling Makes Sense, and it is intended to be an encouragement to people to adopt cycling as a lifestyle. So everybody likes money, everybody likes saving money. So one of the reasons that I'm working so much now in Brownsville and East New York is because our neighborhood here is greatly disenfranchised. We are further out than a lot of the other more connected neighborhoods. It takes you all more bus trips, more shuttle trips on the weekend to get to transportation. It's just hard to get out. I mean, people need to move with the same amount of equitable transportation.
You're talking about meaning they don't have docks?
They don't have docks here. You don't have stations for you to make it practical. So you, out of this neighborhood, would have to find your way close to the museum, or Utica would be the last place there is a city bike station in Bed-Stuy. So I do the financial classes because everybody has monetary needs, and in low-income neighborhoods, it's especially more poignant to save money. The objective is to help people connect the realities between every trip they make on a bicycle versus every swipe they have to make with MTA, or every gallon of gas they're putting into their car. You save whatever the difference is in that. Like you're saving $15, $18.
Pull up, Noel. I don't want your tail wheel getting knocked. So this is the Brooklyn Historical Society. It's part of the inspiration, as I told you all, for even engaging in these kind of tours about free black settlements in Brooklyn, because they opened the abolitionist exhibit here maybe 5 years ago. It's the source of those big booklets I gave to you all. And I think the abolition exhibit in here, it's semi-permanent. It's going to leave, if not this fall, spring of next year. So like in New York, for example, the North has this reputation, and they kind of tout it culturally, that, you know, we're the more progressive, you know, part of the nation. We got rid of slavery first, and that's why the South wanted to fight us. But like, let's keep it 1,000% as per the exhibit. Slavery was very, very, very much a part of New York. It's very, very much part of the North, because, I mean, even though the South was growing cotton, who was putting it through the mills and making it into fabric? We were. You know, we were selling boats, but who was making the tweed? Who was farming the flax and stuff out of fields? Slaves were in the North. Rolling.
Cycling in New York City is great because you can. And you can get anywhere you need to get via a bicycle. You can truly get it done here.
Wouldn't it be great if there were a train between Brooklyn and Queens that didn't have to pass through Manhattan? Oh, gee, there is.
Millions pour into the area every day. And so we see that the main job of transportation in a city is to carry people between 3 points: where they live, where they work, and where they play. Certainly the most important means within the city is the subway.
Oh boy.
One word I could describe the G train would be
eclectic.
Cold.
Clean.
Accessible. Slow.
Short.
Misunderstood.
It's very quirky. It's very unique. In the 20s, there was a mayor in New York City called John Hylan. Hylan was rather hostile towards both the BRT and the IRT. Mayor Hylan proposed that the city operate its own line. And so a third company sprung up, and that was called the Independent, or the IND. They took the letters A through HH, and local services had the double letter designation, hence the GG. There was never a G then because there was never an express service. In the 1960s, they decided to drop the double letter designation, and then it simply became the G. The G line actually first opened in 1933, and it was a short shuttle service between Queens Plaza and Nassau Avenue. By 1937, we had the whole line. I think today it's a permanent extension back to church, and I think it's really important that you're linking a neighborhood like Kensington with neighborhoods like Greenpoint and Williamsburg in northern Brooklyn. Let's look at the train we're sitting on. This is an original IND subway car. So these were the first G trains. Today, we ride on trains from the 1980s. It is the only line in the system that does not go into Manhattan. So it's this sort of own animal, all of its own, and it has its own character. And I think the people that ride it have their own character. The G line happens to be one of those lines where the people that ride it make multiple transfers. Riders of the G are great transferers.
The fight for a better G train was the Riders Alliance first campaign. In 2012, everybody knew that the G train was a disaster. It was running really infrequently. There wasn't enough trains. People were sprinting to it. They're breaking down really frequently because there was old train cars.
I've been a member of Riders Alliance since fall of 2012. They recruited me from a subway platform in Bedford-Stuyvesant, where I live. And it was really just at the right moment because I had gotten embedded in my neighborhood like over those 5 years and was interested in ways in which I could contribute and give back. And I was also learning the frustrations of, and the joys, of living on the G train. Our video went sort of viral, and at the end of all of this work, we got this full-line review of the G train. We went and measured wait times, and guess what? It's cray. Or the train does stop all over the platform, depending upon what station you are and what time of day is it, and whether it's the weekday or the weekend. So people can't tell. So the wins in our campaign were 25% more trains in the evening rush hour, which I think we all noticed. Signs that say the G train stops here, and a commitment that the G train would stop in predictable places, weekday, weekend, like whatever the time of day, and a commitment to do improved communication so that it would be easier to get information when you're on the platform. Once they were implemented a year after that campaign announcement, the average commuter could recognize and appreciate right away, and that you felt like your life was made better a lot of ways.
From 2001 onwards, all G trains have been 4 cars long. They needed to increase how many trains that they could run at peak times, but they didn't have enough train cars. So what they decided to do was take a 6-car and sometimes an 8-car G train, and they decided to cut it back to 4 cars. The rest of the cars, all the spare cars that they used, just made more trains. So this is how they increased how many G trains they could have running.
Well, it was my workout regimen for a long time, but I haven't been able to sprint in a while because I've really gotten the pattern of how it stops and those signs actually work. So it's been a while. I've had to switch to yoga.
Back when I was growing up on Park Slope, the G train was empty. And you can pretty much find the G train crowded at all times of day now.
This is the Queensbound G train.
Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Bed-Stuy, these are all growing neighborhoods. But really, even today, the G line probably accounts for less than 3% of subway ridership.
I ride the G, cross town every day, going to work. It's the only way to finish my Sudoku.
There's a subway line that all of the time everybody's always mocking, but that's just the words of the idiot herd, cause I think it's pretty rockin'.
You don't need Manhattan, 2 or 3 or 4. Just run down the platform before they close the doors. Take the G train, runs a little slow.
Even though you're skipping Smith Street, I'm still gonna ride you daily. Even though you're stuck at Hoyt Street, all the other trains just fail me. It ain't nothing but a G train, baby.
Right now, we don't have line-specific campaigns because there's no way for the MTA to actually run more train lines or do real improvements without major funding. Our signal technology that allows trains to run more frequently, but the technology's from the 1930s. That's almost 100 years old.
We lose jobs, we lose pay, fix the subway right away.
I'm here today with my colleagues to announce a collaboration of 28 organizations and growing to fight to fix the subway.
I would say the G train is, I think, the most special train in New York City. And I'm not just saying that because I live on it. I'll still think that even if I move to another neighborhood. And it's really because of that character of connecting two boroughs and not going through Manhattan. I think it gives it like just a special flavor that if anybody really wants to experience New York, they probably should experience the G train as well. Otherwise, they're missing out on something really special. G train forever.
Even though you make me late sometimes, I know you're the best of the lines.
Even though you make me wait sometimes.
Well, this episode flew by quicker than a crosstown express. If you missed it or you want to check anything out again, visit us on the web at youtube.com/BRIC TV. Bye now.